Imagine living next door to someone who made every single day feel like a battle, throwing snow into your yard, screaming about your lawn, even charging at you like a wild animal just because you shoveled your own driveway. That was my childhood. But what he never knew was that I had a secret weapon, and eventually, it became my sweetest revenge. If you've ever had a neighbor from hell, or just wished karma would finally catch up with someone, hit that subscribe button, like this video to join the revenge army, and drop a comment about the worst neighbor you've ever had. Trust, you will want to hear how this one ends. Let's dive in. Growing up, most kids about friendly neighbors, the type who wave when you ride your bike, who might bring cookies over during the holidays. But for me, it was the exact opposite. My family lived next door to the worst neighbor imaginable. Let me paint the picture. He was in his 70s, but don't let that fool you. He was loud, aggressive, and absolutely toxic. Every winter, when we shoveled our own driveway, he'd come storming out of his house like a soldier on a mission. And instead of clearing his own snow, he'd deliberately shoveled piles of it into our yard. Imagine being a kid, trying to help your parents outside, only to see the snow you just cleared get dumped back at you by an old man with a twisted grin. But that wasn't the end of it. On random days, we'd come home to find that he'd wandered into our property while we weren't there, trimming our trees without permission, like he was the self-appointed ruler of the block. He'd scream at us if our grass wasn't perfectly maintained, pacing on the edge of his yard with his fists clenched, as if the sight of a few weeds was a personal insult. And the creepiest part, he would stand there, on his porch, watching my little sister mow the lawn. She wasn't even 18 at the time. And there he was, eyes locked on her every move, the kind of stare that makes your skin crawl. Even recalling it now makes me sick to my stomach. One winter, things reached a breaking point. My family and I were out front, shoveling snow, when suddenly I heard this bellowing roar. He came charging across our yard like a man possessed, his face red, spittle flying from his mouth. He was actually coming at us, ready to start a physical fight, because we were shoveling our own driveway. I still remember the icy panic, mixed with rage, that surged through me. My heart hammered in my chest, my fists clenched, and before I knew it, I stood my ground. I told him flat out, if you come closer, I'll drop you right here. For a second, he froze. Maybe it was shock. Maybe it was the realization that I wasn't just a kid anymore. But he stopped. The police were called that day, but of course, nothing happened. They shrugged it off as just a neighborhood dispute. Meanwhile, my family and I went back inside, shaking with adrenaline and frustration. See, this man was more than just a nuisance. He was abusive. He'd scream at his wife in the middle of the night, and sometimes, the sounds carried through the thin walls of our houses. We later found out he actually ended up serving time in prison for abusing her. That's the kind of man we were dealing with. So how do you fight someone like that? Someone who thrives on intimidation, who seems untouchable by the authorities. The answer, I realized, wasn't force. It wasn't confrontation. It was something far subtler and far sweeter. Here's where my secret revenge began. I knew one thing about him. He hated religion. Any mention of faith, prayer, or church sent him into a rage. He'd mutter insults about Bible thump whenever people came knocking in the neighborhood. And so, a light bulb went off in my mind. Every time he yelled at us, every time he trespassed, every time he tried to make our lives miserable, I'd quietly slip inside, pick up the phone, or write a quick email. And who was I contacting? Jehovah's Witnesses. That's right. I'd set him up for surprise visits. Picture this. He'd be sitting comfortably at home, probably stewing about whatever petty thing had set him off that day. Then ding, he'd open the door to find smiling strangers holding pamphlets, ready to talk about the Bible. And he'd lose it. I mean, he hated it. You could hear him from across the yard, shouting at them to leave, his voice cracking with fury. Sometimes it took him minutes to finally slam the door. And the best part, it kept happening. Over and over again. Every single time he crossed us, I made sure another appointment was on its way to his doorstep. It became my private game, my personal justice system. He thought he was in control, the king of the neighborhood. But I had found his weakness. And watching him squirm, watching his blood pressure rise as he tried to fend off yet another uninvited visit, it was glorious. The funny thing is, I don't even know if he ever realized it was me. Maybe he thought he was cursed. Maybe he thought the universe was targeting him. All I know is that for once, he was the one who felt powerless. Years later, when I told my parents what I'd been doing all along, they burst out laughing. They couldn't believe it. My quiet little revenge had been going on under their noses the whole time. And honestly, they said it was genius. For years, this man tried to control us, intimidate us, and poison our home with his bitterness. But he never saw my revenge coming. He thought brute force made him untouchable. But in the end, it was his own anger, his own hatred, that destroyed him. Each knock at his door wasn't just a visit, was a reminder that he couldn't escape justice forever. And when he finally went to prison for abusing his wife, It felt like the universe had delivered the ultimate punishment. My little game with the Jehovah's Witnesses was just the warm-up act. And me. I walked away with something far better than fear. I had my dignity. I had my power back. And most importantly, I had the satisfaction of knowing I had outsmarted the neighbor from hell. Revenge doesn't always have to be violent or dramatic. Sometimes, it's about finding that one weakness, that tiny crack in someone's armor, and using it to remind them they can't push people around forever. Justice, in its purest form, is when the bully realizes he's no longer the one in control. So, what do you think? Did this neighbor get what he deserved? And what's the most satisfying revenge you've ever witnessed or carried out yourself? Drop your story in the comments. I'd love to read them. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more insane revenge stories, and share it with someone who's had their own neighbor from hell. Until next time, stay sharp. And remember, sometimes the sweetest justice is served